Hi, my name is Kylie Lane, and I'm going to be talking about some strategies learned in Chapter 4, which is titled Conducting, Practicing, and Deepening Lessons. Once content is introduced through direct instruction as introduced in Chapter 3, teaching must then be further developed into student knowledge, which is what our goal is as teachers, is to develop our kids' knowledge. In this chapter, we learned about different strategies for using standard practice sessions such as close monitoring, which I will talk about later. We also learned about different strategies by examining similarities and differences, such as comparison matrices, which I will also talk about later. Next, we learned about some strategies for examining errors in reasoning, such as identifying errors of attack or weakened references. And lastly, we also read about some things about planning and implications for change. Today, I'm going to talk about two strategies from Chapter 4 that are close monitoring and comparison matrices. The first strategy we are going to be talking about from Chapter 4 is close monitoring. Close monitoring is when students are learning a brand new skill or process and the teacher provides a highly structured and detailed environment that monitors students' actions very closely and helps correct those mistakes early on, then leading them to make mistakes towards the end of the skill. As students become more proficient with the skill or process, they are able to kind of separate themselves and do more practice and learning, but also with the teacher evaluating them and helping them catch those mistakes early on to prevent failure in the later ends. Some ways to execute close monitoring are break procedures into steps. There's no need to drag something out. If you break it into steps, it allows students to be more successful by saying, let's start here, then build up here. It's like a staircase. You got to start at the bottom to get to the next step, to get to the next. You can't just jump. You might break a bone. That's kind of what it is with learning. You got to kind of start at the base and slowly build up. That helps prove successfulness in your students. Another way to do this is model each step as you go. Modeling was talked about in Chapter 3. Modeling it and showing your students what you want helps create less errors and less mistakes. When you're modeling and physically showing your students what you expect of them, they're going to listen and remember, oh, my teacher taught me like this, so I should do it like this. This can help me be successful. After you model each step, allow the students to practice, but don't just let them practice and go on your phone. When they are practicing, walk around and observe them. See if they are applying what you've taught and actually doing the staircase. Make sure they're not jumping. Make sure they're doing it as they're told and they're applying that. That way they can be successful in the long-term game, not just the short-term game. Now, I was researching this and it said move on when all the students are complete. I disagree with that. I think you should move on when most of the students have gotten it, because if you want all of your students to excel in this, you can't let the ones who get it right away be slowed down by the ones who have difficulty. You have to kind of find a balance. If most of your students have achieved a certain goal, stop them. Be like, okay guys, we're going to move on. Circle back, make a note of those students who may not have been proficient enough to excel onto the next. And just kind of when you gradually move on, come back to those students who struggled and say, okay, how can I help you and how can we get to this next step? Maybe while the ones who did excel in that step or process are doing their individual practice and work, go back and help those students who need that help. That brings me to my next point, which is gradually move on. When you gradually move on, it allows the students who have fallen a little bit behind to easily catch up and still progress to success. Next, you want to do is when students are learning new skills, have them repeat that. Repeat them in chorus, and memorization is really good for students. For example, what I'm going to show you is a order of operations PEMDAS method, and what you do is you just kind of say like parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction over and over again. Come up with a song or an acronym. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This is a creative way to help students be successful. Those are just some ways to execute closely monitoring. Now I'm going to flip over my camera and show y'all how I would apply that into my lesson. All right, first what I would do is I would ask my class, what do our letters mean? This is PEMDAS, that is our acronym. So what does it mean? P is for parentheses, so I would ask them to draw what parentheses look like. Now we would do an exponent. What does an exponent look like? An exponent looks like this. That is our exponent. That's what we're looking for. Multiplication, here's what multiplication look like in parentheses with a dot or with an X. Now with division, it can be represented with a slash for division, like right over here, or you can use the actual division symbol. Then we also have addition, which is a plus sign, and subtraction, which is a minus sign. Now, what I would do is we would work this out together. I would say, okay, somebody raise your hand. Tell me what we would do first. Now, we start with P. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So where do we see parentheses? Right here. So we will rewrite this as 9 divided by 3 plus 2. Then somebody, what's 9 plus 10? Correct, it's 19. Put that in your parentheses, minus 8 plus 4 times 3. Now that we have our parentheses out of the way, this is now a sign of multiplication, which is right there. So now, do we have any exponents? Nope, we're good. Now let's do multiplication. So we have 9 divided by 3 plus, what is 19 times 2? Let's go over to the side and work it out. 19 times 2, 9 times 2 is 18. Carry your 1, 2. That is going to be 38 plus 38 minus 8 plus 4 times 3. Now, some students will like to cut out the step, but we're just going to keep going through. So 9 divided by 3 plus 38 minus 8 plus, what's 4 times 3? 12. Now, we did our multiplication. Now we're going to do division. 9 divided by 3 is 3 plus 38 minus 8 plus 12. Now we're going to be working just from left to right. So 38 plus 3, 38, 39, 40, 41. 41 minus 8 plus 12. Now, 41 minus 8, we're going to bring out to the side over here. Scratch out, carry. That is going to be 3. 33. 33, oops, sorry for my tripod, plus 12 equals, let's do some math. That's going to be 45. So 45 is our answer. Now, we would work on this step by step. I would call on my students to help show what do we do. Maybe if somebody were to shout when we used a different operation that wasn't correct, we would say, let's go back and look and see where we messed up. This is how I would help my students progress in this way. Once we did this together, I would allow them to do a couple other practice problems by themselves, and then we could advance onto harder problems, or they could go into group work or do a project with PEMDAS. Next strategy is comparison matrices. A comparison matrix, or comparison matrices, plural, is an analysis tool that allows students to compare several items by arranging them side by side. So what you do is you kind of create a graph, and then the students will pick a topic or maybe different topics and have different elements about them and compare them, and then write a summary at the end based off what they found. And I actually made a comparison matrix. I was very proud of this. I didn't know what to do, and I thought of types of bears. So a way I would implement this into my classroom is if it was a science class and we were learning about different species of bears or something. We've been reading books, going to the library, Googling. Google is a big part of classroom online. Kids have Chromebooks now, and so they're able to access information on the internet. So what I would do is I would give them a topic like types of bears. Sorry, this is flipped, so I'll point. Types of bears. And then they would have to find, we'll talk about brown bears, black bears, and polar bears, 3 common types. What they would do is find books or go and Google facts about that, which are going to be our elements. So for example, brown bears live in northern North America. Black bears live all over North America, and polar bears live in colder regions like Alaska or the North Pole. So we're just going to list different facts. Maybe they're similar, like these 3 are all geographic. The next element is of brown bears is rough fur around their face. Black bears have a slimmer face shape. Polar bears have white fur that helps them blend in with their surroundings. These are all attributes about the bear. So they're all relating, but they are all different in their own ways. This also allows students to find different facts. So maybe I said this, but little Tommy, I almost said Timmy, but Timmy's in class, so I'm not going to do that. Little Tommy found a different fact about brown bears that I didn't. Oh, that's something I can add that I found out about brown bears as well. Then you can also add a third fact where this is fun. Brown bears are often called grizzly bears. Black bears have shorter claws and paws than brown bears. And polar bears are bigger than both black and brown bears. So what you do is you see students had to find 3 different elements about each attribute of a type of bear. And then what they'll do is they'll use this information and maybe information they learned from their classmates, and they will write a summary about their findings and present that to the class or turn it in as an assignment. This is a great example of a comparison matrix and how you can use elements that you have in your classroom, elements online, and resources all over. You can use books, online, your friends. So if somebody else didn't have something I had written down, I'd write it down and add that to my summary and maybe even thank them for helping me learn that knowledge as well. So these are the 2 strategies that I learned about in Chapter 4, comparison matrices and close monitoring. And that's how I would implement them in my classroom.